Buenas tardes a todos, muchas gracias por unirse a nosotros, a nuestro conversatorio entre la ciencia y la ciencia ficción. Esa tensión nos falta ahí en la infografía, pero es muy importante para esta charla. Tenemos a un invitado muy especial, Nikku Madhusudhan, quien es astrónomo, astrofísico, y la idea de este conversatorio entonces es que desde la ciencia ficción más especulativa, más imaginativa, más libre, podamos tener una conversación con alguien que viene realmente de la ciencia y por lo tanto nos puede presentar una resistencia a la imaginación y encauzarla hacia imágenes que quizás sean más reales de lo que podríamos tener si no. Quizás algunos de ustedes escucharon la charla de Nikku en la mañana, muy interesante. Nikku lidera el equipo que me cambió la voz ahí. Lidera el equipo que ha propuesto la idea de los mundos icianos. Esto es una combinación de las palabras hidrógeno y océano. Imagínense un planeta bastante más grande que la Tierra, 4, quizás 7 veces más grande que la Tierra, con más gravedad, completamente cubierto de océano y con una atmósfera muy rica en hidrógeno delgadita. Esta es una posibilidad por varias razones que Nikku explicó en la mañana. Estos son planetas que es muy probable que realmente existan, a pesar de que no los tenemos en nuestro sistema solar. Y dado que pueden tener agua y conservarla, la zona habitable de estos planetas es más grande. Por lo tanto, son muy prometedores para buscar señales de vida en estos planetas. Y esta fue la conversación con Nikku en la mañana y nos presentó además evidencias bastante prometedoras que ya existen de la detección de señales de marcadores de actividad biológica en estos planetas. Nada seguro todavía, una evidencia muy tentativa, muy inicial, pero bueno, excitante, ¿no? Quizás en los próximos 10, 20 años ya vamos a tener la seguridad de que estas señales son lo suficientemente seguras como para estar convencidos de que puede haber vida en otros planetas. Entonces la idea es empezar nuestra conversación retomando un poco problemas técnicos hoy. Vamos a retomar un poco desde ese punto. So, Nikku, I just explained your talk this morning. What you explained about Haitian worlds and how it's quite probable that there is life in these worlds and the promising biosignatures that we have already discovered in these. But you were talking from the point of view of science, of astrophysics, of evidence that we already have and evidence that we're looking for, but this is quite constrained. This is a very tight margin. There are lots of things you cannot say because as a scientist it would be irresponsible to claim such things. But in this space, maybe you're not so much a scientist, but just someone who is excited about these discoveries and someone who hopes to find certain things. So, first question is this. If there is life in a Haitian world, what would it look like? Right? If you could teleport to such a world, what would you expect to find there? What does your imagination tell you? You have to use a microphone.
So are people okay with English?
Yes. I'm gonna translate later.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Not that we have an option here. I don't speak Spanish, but just thought I should ask. No, I mean we are in a very fortunate situation. I'll just preface. I'll give a brief outline. So we have I'm always in a very difficult position in my science because of what you just asked. And you see this in all walks of all types of science, and you've seen this over centuries. What happens is that at the very cutting edge, all science is science fiction. At the very, very cutting edge. So the scientist, in their mind, So, I try to think about these questions. You're asking from a science fiction point of view, but I actually have to think about it. What kind of life are we talking about? What are these signatures and all that on a day-to-day basis? But only the subset of my thoughts that make into publications are considered science. The rest of it is science fiction. So if I were to put all the thoughts that go in my mind into a text, I would have to choose a publisher for science fiction and some of my thoughts who I can prove as science. So that's the situation. That has always been the case. If you go back hundreds of years, people who came up with the electron, for example, in the past century, or people who have come up with flight designs and the first bicycle tires, all of this, like whatever, from applications to pure science, even the Copernican principle, right? Until the experiment came and Galileo demonstrated, the Copernicus principle was science fiction. So imagine that. Even the very basic fact that the Earth goes around the sun and the sun is at the center of the solar system was science fiction at some point. So scientists always have to deal with this. The question is, how much are you comfortable to move away from the party line? So now we are in a much better society where we allow for science fiction as a source of entertainment, right? But Copernican principle, 500 years ago, if you said just for fun that, consider the Earth going around the sun, you can get killed. And people got killed for that, because it was blasphemy to say that. So we are in a much better society which allows for science fiction. So that's great. So now I'll come back to the actual question. I thought I should just lay that ground first because oftentimes the boundary is not very clear when you're talking about cutting edge areas. So until recently, if you talked about search for life in the universe, most of it, like the concept of what life could be, was science fiction. Almost entirety, because there is no data. Up until few years ago, we are talking 3-4 years ago, no data. So you can imagine whatever planet you like. And it's all science fiction, people make movies about and all that. So now comes K218V, like these observations that we're just beginning to make in the past couple of years. Suddenly we realized, so 5 years ago we made the theory of the Scythian world. So we said, maybe these sorts of planets could exist out there. And we did some theoretical calculations to demonstrate that's theoretically possible. But even in my mind, it was a fun thing to do, but I wasn't thinking that it'll actually happen. As theorists, we also need to do that because you make hypotheses and then you predict what you can actually observe. So until you observe, it's just a hypothesis. So it's a little bit better than science fiction in that it has physical principles built into it and like a formalism, but it is essentially science fiction, theory without observations. And then we made the observations. 2023, that was 2-3 years ago. And then we saw, we started seeing these molecules, methane and carbon dioxide. And we were like, hang on a minute, this is actually consistent with the theoretical predictions. And that's when you see that transformation in real time, going from hypothesis to actually an observable. And then we were beginning to see signs of this molecule, DMS, which is a biosignature. Like, how weird is that? Nowhere in my wildest dreams I thought that would actually happen. So it's very comfortable to be a theorist in the sciences because you can predict whatever you want. Some of those things observations will confirm, others observations won't confirm, but it is fun. It's a fun activity. It's like science fiction with putting some scientific principles. But you never actually think that will happen. It's so weird. So when it started happening, it was wild. You'll see some interviews I've given at various places when that first happened. I couldn't sleep for a night. Right? First time we saw signs of DMS, any potential signs. Is this real? Is this actually happening? So for a week, you go into this cognitive dissonance. It's a real effect where you don't know if you believe what you're seeing on your computer screen. All the process you do exactly as you would do with any other data set. but then you see it. And then you go into this dissonance, like disbelief, so on and so forth. So that was 2 years ago, and I'll cut the long story short now. And now I have to think about what kind of life can be on these planets.
I'm going to interrupt you there to translate.
Oh, whoa, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I forgot that he was supposed to translate. I'll keep it short going forward.
Me van a perdonar, pero voy a traducir muy brevemente, resumiendo harto. La respuesta de Nikku es, bueno, toda la ciencia en algún momento es ciencia ficción. Cuando por primera vez se piensa en una teoría, siempre es ciencia ficción. Y cuando se pensó por primera vez que la Tierra podía girar alrededor del Sol, bueno, eso era ciencia ficción. Pero en algún momento se produce una transición y alguien dice, bueno, a ver, veamos si es que puede realmente ser así. Y de repente empieza a aparecer la evidencia. Y hace 5 años nadie había pensado en los mundos iscianos, a nadie se le había ocurrido la idea. Y de la noche a la mañana, bueno, los están buscando con los radiotelescopios y el día siguiente de repente tienen esta evidencia, muy tentativa, muy tal vez, ¿no? Pero de repente ve evidencia en la pantalla de su computador de que quizás tal vez hay vida en uno de estos planetas. Y eso, lo que dijo es, bueno, produce una disonancia cognitiva, que no podía dormir la noche que encontraron esa evidencia y que no podía creer los resultados que estaba viendo ahí en la pantalla porque era tan... Hace 5 años era ciencia ficción y de repente esto ya se convirtió en una posible realidad. So that was very brief what you said. Okay, so now you have to actually commit to an answer. How is life going to be in these worlds?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me here. Yeah, how is life going to be on K218b? For example, if it turns out to be a Haitian world, first of all, we don't know for sure. But again, we make a little bit of prediction. We think if you're saying DMS, if DMS is true, dimethyl sulfide is true, then on...
Can I interrupt
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
DMS, DMS, de lo que está hablando es una molécula, dimetilsulfato,
Yeah.
Que en la Tierra por lo menos no sabemos de nada que produzca esta molécula que no sea orgánico, que no sea vida. Por lo tanto, cuando detectan esto en la atmósfera de otros planetas, es una señal probable de que puede haber vida en esos planetas. Las preguntas son si es que realmente están detectando eso, o si es un artefacto de la observación, o si es que quizás hay otros procesos que también podrían producir esa misma molécula.
Yeah. So on Earth, most of DMS is produced by microorganisms in the Earth's oceans, like algae, phytoplankton. So our guess would be that if we see DMS, maybe there is at least simple microorganisms like phytoplankton in those oceans. That is our baseline assumption, which is a reasonable assumption. If life starts, there is no reason why these sort of very simple microorganisms can't exist in the oceans. That is our guess. And then how complex it can be beyond that is anyone's guess. And that's where the science fiction part comes. You want to say that?
I'm going to actually kick that to our other panelists. From the point of view of science fiction, then, what's the challenge for the scientist? Leo, what can you imagine? I didn't introduce our panelists, actually.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I know.
No introduje a nuestros otros panelistas, que torpe de mi parte. Tenemos a Leonardo Espinosa, miembro de ALIFF, de la Sociedad Chilena de Ciencia Ficción y Literatura Fantástica, miembro del directorio. Leo es escritor de ciencia ficción y además Leo es médico, así que tiene algún trasfondo en biología. Puede hacerle preguntas a Nikku con cierta autoridad. Y tenemos a Daniela, que Daniela no es escritora, pero sí es ávida lectora de ciencia ficción y también es miembro de nuestra asociación. Así que, y también es médico. ¿Dije eso?
Matronas y sexólogas.
Sí. Y su especialidad es matronería, así que vamos a usar a Daniela para imaginar quizás métodos de reproducción extraños que podría haber en otros mundos. Bien, corregí mi error. Leo, please, tell us about...
Debería... funciona bien, ¿cierto? Sí. ¿Debería ser en español o en inglés al principio?
En español primero y después lo traducimos.
Porque en verdad quiero mi pregunta hacerla como dirigida, entre comillas, con la dificultad que dijiste de entre ciencia y ciencia ficción para también profesor Nikku. Así que la hace en inglés, perdón. Pero Yeah, I was saying that my answer is actually going to be a question for you in this matter. Which got me thinking when I was listening what you were saying right now and before in your talks, and it comes about when you find, and let's imagine even that if you find solid biomarkers that are, let's say, if they actually are there, are very conclusive that at least some type of life should exist. Like when there was another, the methane in Venus. I wonder, what do you think, and in terms of, for example, how science fiction can soothe on this, but how do you think it's going to be, what do you think is going to be more difficult for us as humans to actually try to cope with figuring out if the data is correct, or to shift our own paradigm of what we consider life itself? What do you think is going to be more challenging in terms of paradigm change? How do you see that coming?
I think it's the latter. That's
Lo traduzco.
sorry. I think it's going to be the latter that is going to be more difficult. The good thing is that because we have these facilities now, getting the observations, the technicalities of it, the methods, those we have worked very hard over the last 2 decades in developing. So those we are fairly confident. It's a matter of more data to increase the signal to noise, but the methods are standard. So that's a good thing, that we have the methods, we have the tools. You observe more, you increase the data, and you get more significance. So that I'm not worried about. It's the latter that I'm worried about. How do you reconcile with a different kind of life? And that is where big shifts will happen. I'm more confident in society than on the our scientific ability to accept. You see, like I think society at large, that's purely my experience. Society at large is very flexible to revolutionary ideas. Ironically, society actually, if I come to you and say, I think this sort of alien life form will explain the data best, I would think more people would be accepting of that. The challenge comes mostly from those who are actually operating within the scientific realm, because they actually have their jobs depending on it. So that is where the difficulty will be, to come up with a scientific proof and scientific demonstration on exactly proving what you're saying. But society is much more flexible in adapting ideas, because society doesn't need to go back to pen and paper and solve the problem. You might want to.
Sí, bueno, voy a traducir lo que pregunté también resumidamente inicialmente, pero le pregunté al profesor Nikku si es que acaso si es que hubiese evidencia muy concreta de que hubiese con biomarcadores orgánicos o inorgánicos, pero que apuntaran sin duda alguna que hay vida en otro planeta. ¿Qué sería más difícil? ¿El tema de corroborar esa información o el tema de cómo lo aceptaríamos como sociedad, por así decirlo? Y él dice que la información no es lo que principalmente le preocupa, porque eso, digamos, tienen los materiales como tal, sino que es más bien lo segundo, el cómo es que cambiaríamos ese paradigma si es que nos enfrentáramos a esa realidad. Pero lo interesante que comenta es que ese paradigma como dificultad lo ve más difícil en la comunidad científica, más que en la sociedad, que cree que es más flexible, pero es que más en comparación a los científicos, que tendrían que verse en la obligación de corroborar en efecto, digamos, que estaría esa vida y todo el tema del trabajo asociado. Y eso fue básicamente, yo le pregunté, bueno, eso, y respondió. Me atrevo a sumar nomás, solamente lo hago en español, pero después lo paso en inglés como comentario. Yo pienso también que la ciencia ficción en ese sentido, más allá también de su rol meramente especulativo, cuando es hacia el futuro, por así decirlo, o en su rol también de, en cierto modo, entretención, pero a la vez también de motor de pensamiento, más allá de proponer o de pretender descubrir, yo siento que la gran potencia que tiene es que suaviza o va uno forjándole, digamos, esa preparación ante lo que pueda parecer realmente extraño después, creo yo. Digamos, por así decirlo, que más libros de ciencia ficción, a más raros, por así decir, más fácil va a ser también esa aceptación. Y es lo que le preguntaron en inglés a profesor Nikku, si es que está de acuerdo con eso. Well, I was doing a summary of what we were discussing, and then I was telling them that I think that in part, the role of a good role of science fiction in terms of this is beyond being a tool for speculating and doing that first step that you mentioned. It's also something that when you read a lot of it, and if you get in touch with different ideas that can be in science fiction, that they can have no limits, it acts somehow of a mechanism to prepare you, and that's my question, if you agree, to prepare you for the unknown in a way. So if something happens, I don't know, like in the film Arrival, which is based on a story, if you get these very strange organisms or types of life that come around, but you've read it in a science fiction novel, maybe you're going to be even more acceptable, even in the scientific community. But I'm not sure, what do you think if that's true or not? I'm not sure how much science fiction is being read in the scientific community proper.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. There are two aspects. That's a very good point. There are two aspects to that. One, I don't read any science fiction.
After this time, you will.
I'm sorry, because the facts, our facts are just so strange. Like the kinds of science I do is just so out there that all my dopamine requirements are met by the science itself. Yeah. So I don't need science fiction for me to be excited. You see what I mean? Yeah. So I wouldn't count on scientists necessarily reading science fiction and drawing ideas. They could be here and there, but I'm not sure that is the main mechanism, because most of the time I would like to think that scientists are too bogged down by the nitty-gritty. Right? We actually have to satisfy all the equations, all the data. The bar is so high that you dread to think about being motivated by science fiction to do anything, because even if you're doing the most basic thing, the bar is so high that if you get one thing wrong, everyone will jump on you. You see what I mean? Like, it's very difficult. Yeah. But the other side of it is that I think science fiction has a very, very big role to play in society, to prepare society for the findings that are about to come, which is the other side of the coin that you mentioned. Yes. And that's very important, because few hundred years ago, that would not have been possible, as I was saying earlier. But now, that plays a big role in preparing all of us, at least to consider a future that could be as strange as science fiction, and then science could be approaching that. So I think that is a very healthy thing.
¿Traduces tu propia respuesta? Muy brevemente, lo que nos dice Nikku es que en su experiencia en la comunidad científica no se lee mucho ciencia ficción, en parte porque los datos que tienen, los descubrimientos que están haciendo son por sí mismos lo suficientemente asombrosos como para necesitar ir a la ciencia ficción. Pero sí, su percepción es que la ciencia ficción tiene un rol muy importante en la sociedad para abrir nuestras mentes y prepararnos para empezar a acomodar los descubrimientos científicos en nuestra concepción del mundo. Ahora voy a insistir en la primera pregunta que le hice sobre cómo van a ser estos extraterrestres. So, Nikku, you're being very coy, you're being very scientific, but this is the time you have to commit. So, you travel to a Haitian world. What sort of animal is the first one you see? Describe it for us.
So, as fiction?
In your imagination. I mean, because some things you have to be grounded, right? You come to this world, it's a very heavy world. Everything is very massive. It's covered in water, so some sort of fish, one would think, right? The factors that make fish look like fish is the density of water, and that's going to be different there, but it's still a dense material. So
yes.
Are they going to be fishes?
Yeah. So so at what level do you want me to pitch it? Like purely scientific, or should I go off the rails at this point?
I think you should start with science, but then run free.
Okay, let's do it. so
we have an expression in Chile which is run away with the tarros, with the pots. Run away with the pots.
Just go. Okay, cool. Let's do it. Everything's being recorded, right? It's a science fiction session. So So the description, I'll tell you what is weird and real. Okay, even if I take just the data at face value, you're looking at, just imagine, you're landing on this planet, and as you're entering, you have like a very extended atmosphere, so 10 times more extended, roughly, like very large atmosphere compared to Earth. It's still like a thin atmosphere, but compared to Earth, it's very large. And light, okay, it's pure hydrogen, H2, molecular hydrogen with a little bit of other gases, methane, CO2, and so on. And then you come in, it's very hazy. So you see a lot of haze, right, in Santiago. So it'll be like that. So you'll be home.
Haze.
So it'll be a very hazy atmosphere, and you're coming through, and then you hit these oceans. And for as far as you can see, anywhere on the planet, it'll just be oceans. There is no land to be seen. And in the background, you are seeing a red dwarf star. So the star is a red dwarf, an M dwarf star, for K218b. So it's always red. Okay, so imagine this red infrared type. Infrared, obviously you can't see, but this reddish surroundings completely and tidally locked. So one side of the planet is, you're seeing the red sun, and if you're passing across, like from the day side to the night side, you have a permanent night side.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would the night side be frozen over, or is it
Not
still liquid?
necessarily. Not necessarily. You could still have liquid water on the night side, but you have a permanent night side and you have a permanent day side, and then as you're going from one to the other, you can see this red sort of sunrise. So that is the beautiful environment we're talking about. And then we come to life. So for sure, you know that, again, if you detect life, we are talking about, like microbial life is no problem, like the phytoplankton, algae blooms that we have. So then you're like asking, what complex life could be there? Scientifically, if you think about it, no one knows. The reason for that is because you just have ocean everywhere. So for complex life, your bones, your structure, and so on need elements. You need carbon, you need oxygen, phosphorus, all of these elements. No one knows how those elements will be populated on a Haitian world, because the oceans go deep. You land on the planet surface, you have ocean, but then if you take a deep dive, you just keep going. It's oceans, oceans, oceans. On Earth, the oceans are about 10 kilometers deep. On a Haitian planet, it could be 100 kilometers deep, or even 1,000 kilometers. So you just have ocean for as far as you can dive. I mean, you won't exist very long, but imagine you have a suit and you can just keep diving. So deep that at the bottom of that ocean, you still don't have land mass. There's no land. It's frozen ice. So the water converts to ice, high pressure ice at the bottom. So it's transparent bottom. Imagine that. So that is the world we are thinking about. So we don't know how complex life can start on such planets. But if you do have complex life, then it has to...
How do you imagine it?
Exactly. How do you imagine it? Imagine transparent fish. Right? What kind of... Can plants be there? We don't know. Right? So it's translucent plants maybe, like, or very simple life forms which, like sponges and so on.
Maybe floating.
Maybe floating. And then you ask, well, what kind of complex life can you have? And this is where I'll break free. So one idea could be that maybe life is hard, complex life can be hard to be synthesized on, to take place on that planet. But maybe the planetary system has other planets, rocky planets, that could have life on them. And those would travel onto this planet for a vacation.
Panspermia. Right?
Sorry?
Like panspermia?
Panspermia is for origin of life, but what I'm saying is more like a vacation.
So Haitian planet would be a vacation planet.
Yeah, so you plan a vacation to a Haitian planet. So you're a very advanced life form in another part of the solar system, and then you land on this planet, and you build these flotillas, these floating barges on this planet, and you could have whole civilizations staying there for a long time. And then you might ask, what kind of planet, life could that be, right?
But if, for example, human beings came to such a world, these are very heavy worlds, right? 5 masses of Earth, maybe 8
Yeah, I mean the gravity.
sub-Neptunes, but
What is important is the gravity, right? So the planet can be big, but the radius is also big. So it's the gravity that matters, and the gravity is only about 20% higher. So m over r squared, right? So gravity isn't that big a deal. So we're talking about 20% higher gravity. That's fine. More importantly, is that the air you breathe is not oxygen. It's molecular hydrogen.
and if you take oxygen there, that's dangerous.
Exactly, explodes. So you will have to go in a spacesuit of some kind if you're an oxygen, if you're a species used to oxygen. But you could be a species used to hydrogen. And hydrogen, turns out, is extremely good for microorganisms. It's a very good fuel. That is why we want hydrogen fuel, right? Why? Because it's a very good fuel. You need very little it has a very high conversion efficiency. And because it's hydrogen and because it has a lot of methane, you could also have lots of hydrocarbons. So you won't have energy problems on this planet. Fuel is abundant. So if you can start complex life, you'll become technologically advanced very quickly because you have loads of fuel at your disposal.
Voy a intentar traducir, ahí hablamos harto. Bien, entonces la pregunta inicial es cómo podría ser la vida compleja, ¿no? Los animales que podríamos encontrar en un mundo así, un mundo oceánico. Y en realidad la respuesta parece que no es muy alentadora, porque las condiciones de vida serían muy difíciles aquí, ¿no? Un ser vivo necesita una serie de elementos para crecer, necesita calcio para los huesos, carbono, incluso metales pesados, hierro, qué sé yo. Y estos elementos, difícil imaginarse que podrían estar disueltos en el océano, es difícil imaginarse cuál es el acceso que tendría un animal para encontrar estos elementos. Incluso, dice, si uno se sumerge en los océanos de estos planetas, uno baja, y lo único que encuentra es más océano hasta llegar a un núcleo que ni siquiera es de tierra, sino hielo, y hielo a alta presión. Entonces, parece que es difícil imaginarse qué tipo de animales complejos podrían haber en estos mundos. Microorganismos parece que estamos bien, pero animales complejos es más difícil. Claro, peces transparentes podría haber, esponjas transparentes. Eso es lo que se atreve a imaginarse. Lo que sí parece, es más entretenido, parece, es imaginarse, digamos, visitantes de otros planetas que podrían llegar ahí, instalarse y vivir en barcos siempre. Sería un poco difícil de respirar, porque la atmósfera es de hidrógeno, pero por lo menos habría mucho combustible, así que no nos tendríamos que preocupar de eso.
Desde mi visión. Lo que quiero añadir es que yo pienso que muchas veces cuando pensamos en estos otros espacios que pueden existir, nos seguimos limitando a las formas de vida que conocemos acá. Porque en el fondo, si sigo pensando en cómo respiramos acá, de qué estoy formada yo, cómo me alimento, nos mantenemos todavía como in the box, como todavía pensando en cómo vivimos nosotros, y creo que eso es lo que nos puede ayudar la ciencia ficción, en el fondo, salir de esta caja y poder decir, hay más opciones. O sea, si dentro del planeta hay un nivel impresionante de variabilidad, porque en realidad sí la diversidad, nosotros no existimos, somos todos por algo completamente diferente, probablemente en otros planetas, en otros espacios, estas formas de vida van a ser distintas. Como, claro, creo que de repente, por como vivimos, tendemos a buscar, a replicar. En fondo, lo que yo veo acá, ¿cómo va a vivir allá? Pero probablemente allá son otros seres que están viviendo de otras formas. Sí, yo creo que hay que abrir quizá ahí un poco a las posibilidades, y creo que eso es lo que nos invita a la ciencia ficción también. O sea, ¿qué me voy a encontrar? ¿Cómo funciona allá? ¿Cómo se generan sociedades en un espacio así? O sea, eso, quería dejar planteada principalmente esa idea. Voy a intentarlo. Okay, Nikku. I was just saying that when we talk about exoplanets and life over there, we think about people like us or animals like the ones we have here, like how we breathe, how we feed, how we live. But I think sometimes you gotta think out of the box and say maybe there are other kind of civilizations there that work completely different. And it's hard for us to imagine, but I think there must be other way. And I think that's the thing that science fiction can give us, like making us imagine beyond. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Thanks for saying that.
We have Solaris as an example.
Solaris.
You go with that.
I was going to. Right, so there's a very famous science fiction novel by Stanislav Lem, Solaris. And the idea there is it's also a world covered in ocean, but the entire ocean is sentient. Actually, no. The ocean is maybe sentient. It's never cleared up because if it is sentient, it's so strangely sentient that really no one knows. It behaves very strangely. They don't even know if it's really alive. It could be just physical processes. So that adds to Danny's observation, right? I mean, there are things that we can imagine, but there is no basis for scientific speculation there. That's the wild edge. Yeah.
Can I add Solaris? Yeah. Just to mention about the ocean, I think it's also important about that author, it's from Poland, Lem, that there is a big topic, regardless of the ocean being very interesting. You know, there's in the world he imagines there is scientists dedicated to this ocean, but it kind of makes it clear that it is sentient. But the point is that if there is truly intelligent, but way too different than the one we have, there is absolutely no form of communication. And you know that's like the dark side of it. You know, like we may be in front of it, but we will never get a way to communicate. I mean, that's of course one book. We have others more optimistic in terms of that. But yeah, I think we recommend you that book. It's interesting.
Actually, I always say you shouldn't read Solaris. Fiasco is better, but no one believes me there. So we discussed life, biological life. La observación de Leo es que la idea de Solaris, de Stanislav Lem, es, bueno, en este planeta hay un océano que cubre todo el planeta y este océano es muy difícil determinarlo, pero quizás está vivo y quizás es inteligente. Nunca queda claro porque, bueno, cuál es el estándar que le ponemos a eso y cómo lo medimos. Entonces hay una serie de discusiones científicas que se explican en la novela y que nos dejan un poco colgados porque no sabemos si realmente es inteligente o no. Y el punto final, como resalta Leo, es que, bueno, hay ciertas clases de inteligencia que podríamos tenerlas delante, pero nunca poder comunicarnos con ellas porque son sencillamente demasiado extrañas, demasiado diferentes a la nuestra. Y eso también engancha con lo que decía Dani, digamos, formas de vida muy, muy extrañas. Bueno, y ahora le voy a preguntar a Nikku cómo podemos dar el paso desde la biología hacia la cultura, digamos. O sea, si hay en estos planetas formas de vida, ¿cómo podrían influir las condiciones ambientales de esos planetas en una cultura que se desarrollara ahí? So, we discussed biology. My impression is that you are not very encouraging there. It would be hard for complex life to develop in a Haitian world.
We don't know that. I mean, it could be, and it could be very...
Microphone.
Sorry, guys. No, I mean, the thing is, I mean, we can't commit that there is not going to be complex life, right? There could be. We just don't know that. And as a scientist, you always try to err on the side of caution. So even when we detect, I mean, even right now when we are seeing some signs of DMS, we are very cautious all the time, saying maybe we don't know whatnot, right? So that is just that position. But I think if you allow for like all odds, then I don't think you can rule out complex life. And in fact, for planets like this, which are around M dwarfs, not just K218b, but M dwarf, other Haitian planets which are orbiting M dwarf stars, which can be very long lived. So
there's more of them.
yeah, like Earth, basically, the entire history is order 4.5 billion years. But these planets could have been there for 7 billion years, 8 billion years, which means they had a lot of time. So over that time, you could reach a level of complexity that's much beyond our comprehension, right? So if you want to go down that route of imagining, there can be a lot of complexity. There could be reptilian life of a level of intelligence that probably we don't see here, because most of our major animals that that were there in the past had vanished, right, due to various geological events. They're all dead now, like most of the big ones, and you're left with what you're left now. But in a different environment, those big animals may still survive. Or in an oceanic environment, major reptiles may survive. So fish can be more of a different form of intelligence. We don't know that, right? So again, but this is all in the almost in the already in the fiction regime that you pushed me into. but but yeah, you can't deny that. But scientifically, if you want to establish if this is possible, then we don't know.
We're going to blackmail you later.
Okay.
Professor Matsuhura believes in aliens that are like fish.
Intelligent fish.
We're going to threaten your reputation. Okay, so next step. Assume complex life.
Do you want to translate that?
It's a continuation of that.
Okay.
Okay, let me translate. Or I'm going to forget it. Bueno, la primera parte de la pregunta ahora es si... A mí me pareció que no era muy optimista, muy alentador acerca de la posibilidad de vida compleja en este tipo de mundo. Pero en realidad lo que está diciendo es que prefiere equivocarse por el lado de la precaución y no decir cosas que, bueno, no tiene cómo saberlas. Pero eso no descarta en principio la posibilidad de que sí haya vida en nuestro mundo y que sea muy compleja. Y hay factores que sí dan esperanza en esa posibilidad, a saber que este tipo de planetas suele existir en torno a estrellas rojas, y las estrellas rojas duran mucho más, tienen vidas mucho más largas que estrellas como la nuestra, amarillas. Y por lo tanto estos planetas han existido durante mucho más tiempo y por lo tanto han tenido más oportunidad de desarrollar vida, quizá. Y ahora le voy a preguntar entonces cómo pasamos de eso a la cultura, que ya habían usado esa pregunta. So, assume life, assume complex life, assume intelligence. How would the conditions of such a world affect a culture? Would it be technology? Yeah, you have practically endless space in all directions in this world, right? I mean, maybe with the constraints of the night side and the day side and the poles, but it's basically the same in every direction, right? So would it be society or would it be just lone animals? Would they have technology? Would they have tools? What for?
Yeah. I mean, there's a big bias in the question when you said, would it be society or is it animals? That
I said lone animals. I said
that presupposes that animals don't have societies of their own.
Recorded forever.
not what I meant, really.
We're all in that boat. So these are hard questions, right? Because the moment you're talking about life elsewhere, you have to let go of that assumption, right? You have to contend with the fact. You have to contend with the fact that there could be just fish, but their entire civilizations built out of intelligent fish, right? What sort of technology can they have? We don't know that. What kind of tools can they build? We don't know that. But it's hard to imagine. I'll just admit that upfront in a realistic way. But intelligence itself, I think, given long enough, may develop, and it's anyone's imagination what they can do.
So it was actually a leading question because could this explain the Fermi paradox? if most life develops in such worlds.
The Fermi paradox, frankly speaking, I'm never worried about, because that presupposes that A, civilizations want to communicate, B, they can communicate, and we had just been radio loud in the last 100 years. We have been here for 4.5 billion years, and only in the last 100 years we have the radio technology, and 1,000 years from now we may not exist, we may kill ourselves from global warming or whatever. So that window is very small. And then even if you have the technology, do you really want to communicate? I mean, we may, but why do you think everyone would want to communicate? We may just be busy with our own planet, like most of us are, and just get on with things. So I'm not actually particularly worried about Fermi paradox. But if you ask me, then does life exist out there? I think there's a very high chance that life exists out there, and maybe to some level intelligent life as well. But I don't worry about communications.
Le pregunté a continuación. La respuesta a la posibilidad de cultura, digamos, ahí es todo puede ser, ¿no? Pero la parte siguiente de la pregunta era entonces cómo se explica, o si tenemos en la variedad de estos mundos alguna explicación posible a la paradoja de Fermi, que explico brevemente. Es la idea de que si en el universo está lleno de vida, entonces ¿por qué no escuchamos? ¿Por qué no hay ondas de radio? ¿Dónde están las señales de esta vida que deberían estar por todas partes? Pero en realidad ese tema no le preocupa mucho porque, bueno, aquí en la Tierra ha habido vida durante millones y millones de años, pero hemos estado emitiendo ondas de radio durante apenas los últimos 100, y no tenemos por qué asumir que alguien tiene interés en emitir ondas de radio, en comunicarse y todo esto. Así que la paradoja de Fermi no es un problema. Bien, entonces ahora...
Just wanna... Can I... May I? So, sorry.
It was your turn anyway, but...
Oh, no, it was for Danny. No, that was just in a way of Professor Nikku saying Fermi's paradox not being something to kind of worry about because, yeah, there are so many possibilities and the chance is out there. But I'm just thinking in terms of, because we share the profession in the health system, so it's for Danny. I think we would probably be worried about how to treat what we do in our job, I would say. I don't know if you want to say something about that. Would you be worried about that? As you wish. Now, this is just because we share even though not the same profession, but we treat in certain moments sexually transmitted diseases. So I think that could be our problem everywhere. I mean, I think it would be interesting for science fiction books to have that. I'm saving you from the animals. And
Leo has a novel about
syphilis winning.
Interstellar doctors.
Syphilis winning. Yes.
¿Voy a traducir igual tu pregunta?
Dale.
Ya, Leo está preguntando como en contexto a que ambos trabajamos en salud, cómo esto podría afectar como a nuestra labor real, como el tema específicamente nosotros que trabajamos con infecciones de transmisión sexual. O sea, yo creo que las infecciones de transmisión sexual llegan igual. Al existir una vida sexual con contacto, o sea, entendiendo si es que efectivamente la sexualidad se vive de una forma similar a la nuestra. Si es que la sexualidad es de una forma completamente distinta a lo que nosotros conocemos. ¿Cómo? Puede ser, pero requieren algún tipo de contacto probablemente. Y si no existe ningún grado de contacto, ¿podrán haber? Yo creo que van a ser otras en el fondo los desafíos que se nos vayan presentando. De partida, ¿cómo va a ser esta sexualidad? ¿Cómo va a existir este contacto entre uno y otro? ¿Cómo vamos a vivir el deseo, el placer? ¿Funcionará de una forma similar a la nuestra o no? Porque creo que esa es como la base para lo que nos lleva a nuestra labor diaria. Creo que la gente, o los seres que se dediquen al cuidado de la salud o del bienestar de un otro siempre van a estar. Pero creo que van a ser de veredas diferentes.
A ver, pregunta para nuestros doctores. Supongamos que colonizamos estos mundos. ¿Cuáles son los desafíos médicos de atender a seres humanos en un mundo así, ¿no? ¿Cuáles son los posibles problemas que podríamos tener? I'm asking our doctors, what medical challenges could there be for humans living in such a world?
Pero asumiendo que van a ser seres humanos, como nosotros. Es que dijo seres humanos.
Sí, no, sí, ser humano, ¿no? ¿Qué vamos a comer?
Claro, que yo creo que viene desde ahí, desde, de nuevo, cómo nos va a cambiar completamente nuestro sistema de vida. O sea, desde, como tú dices, la alimentación, el contacto con un otro, al estar en un espacio diferente, qué tipo de enfermedades nuevas nos podemos encontrar, qué tipo de opciones de tratamiento vamos a tener acceso. Creo que es rearmar de una u otra forma nuestro quehacer. Es plantearse, teniendo una base y todo, es plantearse desde cero porque vamos a estar en un escenario, asumo, completamente distinto. Pese a que sea la especie humana, como en qué contexto estamos. Si tú me dices una persona, un ser humano, el tipo de planeta, uy, no me olvidé, que son solo en base a océano, probablemente va a ser muy distinto porque las bacterias van a ser distintas, porque los virus que existan van a ser diferentes. So, yo creo que es un reinicio, aunque no sea desde cero, sí es un reinicio de nuestro quehacer, de poder entender un funcionamiento completamente distinto. Entonces creo que es un desafío en todos los niveles. Leo.
You translate, right?
All sorts of challenges for humans living in such a world. Food, possible transplanetary contagions. I don't know what to call it, but could we be infected by microorganisms from these worlds? Is there compatibility there? Around M-class stars, I think we would need to take some sun cream, probably. El dermatólogo, ¿qué nos dice?
Oh, okay. Yes. No, I once had to say something about that, but this is I don't know if it's for exoplanets because they could have an atmosphere that could sustain this, but at least in the solar system, when you think about colonizing other planets, well, not colonizing in a way, but even terraforming another planet or changing ourselves to be on another planet, the main problem, one of the main problems, is radiation. Because if you don't have, the magnetosphere to protect on the thick atmosphere, we would all get skin cancer. So basically, to end this in a science fiction way, we need a very powerful sunscreen, which you can translate in a fun way.
Sí, bueno, las estrellas rojas producen mucha radiación, así que probablemente vamos a necesitar una buena capa ahí de bloqueador solar. O Hawaiian Closet, pasar todo el día debajo de la protección. Estamos apurados con el tiempo, así que una última ronda. Leo, recomiéndale a Nikku una novela de ciencia ficción para expandir sus horizontes literarios.
Me? But can I change a little bit of this? Can I just choose random person to just say one book that they would recommend to Professor Nikku?
Why not?
Or if they have any
I want to say that now. Or if anyone, because
People
as he
have
said,
to recommend you science fiction books so that you can finally read some and...
I can choose because I know some people around here, like. Puedo traducir, digamos que me preguntaron si que yo le recomendara al profesor algún libro de ciencia ficción, ya que me dijeron que le preguntara yo al profesor por algún libro de ciencia ficción porque comentaba él, digamos que no leía tanto, pero yo dije prefería preguntar a alguno de ustedes si es que dado lo que conversamos le recomendarían uno, para digamos no atrasarnos, pero en ese sentido reconozco a lo lejos. Andrés Olave, ¿cuál le recomendarías a profesor Nikku para leer ad hoc al tema?
Aló, hola profesor Nikku. Hello Nikku teacher. No, pues yo le puedo recomendar Solaris de Stanislav Lem. I can recommend you Solaris by Stanislav Lem. Pero en general lo que yo podría acotar ahí, ¿cuánto se llama? Es que hay muchos libros que trabajan la relación que hay entre la ficción y la ciencia ficción. Ya es una frontera que se va haciendo borrosa conforme entramos en el futuro. Pero aparte de Solaris, ¿cuál más podría ser?
La burbuja. Sí. Yo recomendaría la serie Las burbujas de Bernard Benji porque tiene una propuesta muy interesante donde cambia la física, que él dice las constantes universales no pueden ser todas las mismas, o el set de constantes universales no pueden ser todas las mismas en todos lados en el universo. Y él imagina una parte del universo en donde las constantes universales son diferentes a las que nosotros conocemos, y eso hace muy difícil imaginarlas. Y el logro mismo de que Bernard Branch haya puesto esta imaginería dentro de esta serie de libros es muy, muy interesante.
No importa. Cristóbal, habla aquí alguien es.
Perdón.
Sí.
¿Aló?
Por eso, sí, si no está bien.
Sí.
Ok.
Sí, bueno, no tengo libros que comentar, pero sí me gustaría hacer una pregunta.
Es recomendación del libro, ¿no? O sea, perdonen si solamente...
Estamos concluyendo, digamos.
Era una forma buena, por supuesto.
Ya, cada uno tiene 10 segundos para decir.
Stanley G. Weinbaum. He got a lot of stories about the Martian forms of life.
Excelente, 10 segundos.
¿Puedo hacer una pregunta?
No, tenéis 10 segundos para hacerla.
What about the Maxwell equations and also the thermodynamic laws?
No podemos hablar de termodinámica. Pasamos, perdiste el turno. La siguiente, por favor. Creo que tú habías preguntado.
Es una pregunta, no una recomendación. ¿Se puede?
10 segundos.
Ya. Es que hablaban mucho de como colonizar o comunicarse, pero es complicado, o sea, ni viajando a la velocidad de la luz probablemente estaríamos vivos para llegar allá. Y por lo mismo, si se llegara a confirmar la existencia de la vida en otro planeta, ¿cuál sería el siguiente paso? ¿O qué implicaciones éticas tendría? Porque es distinto hablar como de, ya, vamos a hacer una nave y vamos a viajar allá, pero en la práctica es poco probable. Entonces, ¿qué sigue después? ¿Se continúan con investigaciones? ¿Qué pasa?
Amiga mía, me están haciendo todo tipo de señales que se nos acabó el tiempo. Así que no sé, quizás te puedes quedar un rato al final y conversamos ahí a la salida. Pero con eso creo que estamos efectivamente en el tiempo. Aquí están muy desesperados por echarnos de la sala. Así que muchas gracias a todos por venir. Ojalá hayan podido disfrutar y hayamos aprendido algo. Muchas gracias a todos. Y thank you very much, Nikku, for your participation.